Toulouse, France, with over 1 million residents, is the fourth largest city in France, behind Paris, Lyon, and Marseille. It's known to locals as La Ville Rose, or the Pink City, because of the many buildings constructed with pink stone. As recent as 5 years ago, Toulouse was ranked the second best place in France to work. But as peaceful as it now seems here in Toulouse, residents have not forgotten what happened over 10 years ago when a radical Islamist on a motorcycle shot and killed 3 soldiers, then later opened fire on a Jewish high school, killing a religious teacher, his 2 young children, and the headmaster's daughter. Another student was shot in the heart, but survived.
Moi, je n'habite pas très loin.
I didn't live very far from the Ozar Torah school. I took my car and came here to the community center, and there I saw the chaos.
Pourquoi le chaos? Parce que ici au centre communautaire, il y avait.
Why the chaos? Because here, in the community center, there were moms who work here and who had taken their children to school in the morning, and we did not yet know in which school the drama was taking place.
Dans le bâtiment, les femmes criaient.
In the building, the women were screaming. Some were in the toilet throwing up, and some were crying. We expected to have information about what was going on. And the craziest thing is that in the community of Toulouse, everyone knows each other. Therefore, we said to ourselves it is surely someone we know who was affected.
A memorial now stands on the grounds of the Jewish high school where 8-year-old Miriam Monsenego, 6-year-old Ari Sandler, and his 3-year-old brother, Gabriel, were gunned down while waiting for a ride to their elementary school. Algerian French jihadist Mohamed Merah also shot and killed Ari and Gabriel's father, Rabbi Jonathan Sandler. He was a religious instructor at the high school. Mrs. C is an English teacher at the school and was there the day of the attack.
Let's just say it was probably the worst nightmare that you can imagine, and I really don't want any people to have to live through this, even my worst enemies, I would say.
As a teacher, you probably had to be very strong for the students. How did you keep everyone calm?
I knew there were young ones in the hall there, just close to, and I don't know, when I saw him just run back into the building and shouted to the kids who were coming out from the synagogue, just shelter, get back to the synagogue and shelter. And they were just looking at me, you know, with large eyes, clearly thinking, what's going on with you? You're just getting crazy this morning, what's happening? And then I knew I didn't have time to go and tell them precisely, because I knew the younger ones were behind me in the hall. And I had to put this, also shelter them. So just shouted to the older ones who were looking at me like that, and then running back to the other building, telling the kids, okay, go shelter. And then I didn't go with them because I knew I had to call the police.
The Ozar HaTorah Jewish School has since been renamed Or Torah and dedicated to Miriam, who was the school headmaster's daughter. Rabbi Yosef Yitzhak Matusov and his wife Esther Matusov are the directors of the Gan Rashi Elementary School where the children attended. Despite the tragic circumstances, they said there were miracles that occurred in the midst of mayhem.
Dans le malheur, dans la tragédie,
there has been a great miracle. The miracle was that a terrorist arrived 5 to 7 minutes after the student went into class. Because they start at 8 a.m., they start Tefillah. The students arrive a little before 8 a.m. to go inside for Tefillah, the prayer which lasts until 8:30 a.m. So most of the students were already inside when the dreadful killer arrived. There were no students in front of Ozar HaTorah, and the authorities were behind, and the police did not let them through.
So just the 5 were left in the school courtyard. The 3 Sandlers, Miriam Monsenego, and another boy who was wounded trying to save Miriam.
Brian, il s'appelait cet enfant. et Bijawi, Brian Bijawi.
Brian was the kid's name. Brian Bijawi got wounded, but unfortunately, he shot the little Miriam, who was older. She was 8 years old, already in CE2, which is 3rd grade. She was a very cute little girl, very sweet and very simple. She glowed, really a beautiful girl. And he grabbed her by her hair and shot her, so she was killed.
And she was always happy. I remember it was Thursday. The Thursday before, she was waiting like this at the door, you know, like you saw before, the children waiting to go to the self. She was waiting like this, and I passed by and I told her, Miriam, it was a little bit before Pesach, it was 3 weeks before Pesach. I'd asked her, so who is coming for Pesach? Because her brothers and the sisters, they were in Jerusalem. So I asked her, who are coming for Pesach at home to make the holiday, the Seder? And so she told me, you know, this year, nobody is coming to us. We are going to Israel for Pesach. And she said it to me, you know, she was so happy about it. That was my last discussion with her.
The terror of March 19th, 2012 still haunts the Toulouse Jewish community. It was the first time since the Holocaust that Jewish children were murdered in cold blood. Toulouse Deputy Mayor Nicole Yardini was a regional president of the CRIF at that time. CRIF is a Jewish political organization whose mission it is to fight against all forms of anti-Semitism, racism, intolerance, and exclusion. The organization also defends human rights. Yardini was one of the early ones on the scene.
So when I was walking up, it's very strange because I was not questioning at that moment who did it. And when I got to the school, I'd like to spare what I saw because it's very difficult. It was still bodies and it was very... What I felt inside was that I was looking at my parents when I saw the kid. My parents were hidden children during World War II, and the similarities in their eyes. That's what I imagined my parents in that situation, having to hide, being afraid, being scared. It was a very strange feeling inside.
The killer, Mohammed Merah, was at large for 2 days after the school shooting, as authorities searched for him throughout Toulouse and all of France. It made those 48 hours extremely tense because there was concern there'd be another strike. What they did not know at the time is that Merah and his brother had planned a 9-day shooting spree.
After the shooting and the killing of the first paratrooper in Montauban, I read the information and I knew that it was a Muslim doing it, not the extreme right. The extreme right will never kill a French paratrooper, on the contrary. So I knew this was one element. The second element is the manner that they shot him. He killed them by touching them. You see? When you touch with the revolver. So this is a special manner to kill. Nobody's doing it like this. I knew what was the threat, and I said it. Nobody believed me.
Following the attack, the community was still in mourning and afraid. Toulouse residents like Sister Eliana Curillo of Jewish descent came forward to help. Sister Eliana, who now lives in Jerusalem, had 3 Jewish grandparents who survived the Holocaust.
I think the atmosphere was that of fear. I arrived and my own community, Catholic community, said, you know, we actually had to close the doors of the monastery for our prayer times because we were afraid. This guy was going around on a motorbike, so we didn't know where he would strike again. And that was a very scary time. When you would go to pray to any office, Kabbalat Shabbat in any synagogue in Toulouse, you wouldn't be able to get in unless you were introduced or you would come with someone who was known to the community. There was the police cars were everywhere, and it was a very, very stressful time.
Nobody can imagine that without this kind of motivation, you can kill children. And what is the motivation? Hitler and the Nazi regime, they eliminated Jews because they said, they consider that the Jews are Untermenschen, not human. We were like microbes. For the Islamic faith, Jews, and for him, Jews are not human. You have to, you are obliged to eliminate us. That's what he did, with good faith. For him, it was an act of faith.
Bien sûr, il y avait beaucoup de tension. D'abord,
of course, there was a lot of tension. At first, we knew nothing about the killer. The first information that circulated in the community was that it was an attack from the far-right wing, political. I remember, at the time we couldn't imagine that it could be an Islamic attack. So we first actually lived those 48 hours in this period of unknown, and it was necessary, especially during those 48 hours, to reassure the community. During this period, we had to organize in this crisis.
Cellule de crise, et il y avait dans cette cellule de crise plusieurs commissions.
There were several commissions which worked together.
Commission psychologique, commission
psychological, medical, social, religious, and logistics commissions to organize ceremonies and events.
Cérémonies d'événements et surtout une commission de communication interne et externe.
Especially along with an internal communication and external communication commission to relate to the community. Because we had to talk to the community and give them information as it came.
But 2 days after his ruthless act, Mohammed Merah was shot dead in a police raid. Meanwhile, in 2019, a Paris Court of Appeals sentenced Abdelkader Merah to 30 years in jail for complicity in the murders committed by his brother.
Oui, bien sûr, il y avait un sentiment de soulagement parce que
of course, there was a feeling of relief.
On devait encore faire du mal, on devait protéger tous les lieux.
Otherwise, we could imagine he could still do harm to us.
Toutes les autres écoles, bien sûr.
Before his capture, we had to protect all the local establishments until he was caught.
Importante, et donc effectivement, on était dans une tension importante pendant.
We had to protect all the synagogues, schools, and shops.
C'était un musulman. Parce que
all the Jewish places needed strict protection. And so, indeed, we were in a lot of tension during the time prior to his capture. Because the Jewish people are very close to the Muslims. We often say we are cousins. So we imagine that we have the same values somewhere. We imagine that we are closely connected. In any case, we couldn't think that a human being so close to us could go and kill children so coldly in school. It seems surreal. You could say this type of tragedy only ever happened, killing children, during the Holocaust, Shoah.
La Shoah, voilà.
But we could not imagine that Muslims could do that to Jews. Because we feel despite everything there is, we have the same father, Abraham. And for me, when I learned that he was a Muslim, I asked myself, how did we get here?
Bien sûr, je veux même pas prononcer le nom de tueur.
Of course, I don't even want to say the killer's name. The shooter was from a family who was close to Jews.
Ils avaient des médecins juifs.
They had Jewish doctors.
Une sœur.
One of their sisters was a babysitter for our school's children. The killer's sister. It means she knew us. She came to the school. We weren't here yet, but the school where we were before. She came to pick up children because she was the babysitter. So what would I say? It was what it was.
The rabbi of Toulouse, Rabbi Doron Naim, was a teacher at the high school when the anti-Semitic murders occurred, and he worked with one of the victims, Rabbi Jonathan Sandler. Now, he has the job of bringing hope to the Toulouse Jewish community.
Il y a un verset qui dit un enseignement, Hachem, il est
There is a verse that teaches, before Hashem sends a challenge to a person, family, or community, he has already thought of the door to escape, solutions, recomfort, and appeasement that he will bring to the family.
aux solutions, au réconfort et à l'apaisement qu'il a.
Because the goal of the challenges that God sends isn't to destroy a person, but it's to try to bring out of the community a religious and spiritual potential that lives within us.
Des capacités religieuses et spirituelles qui sont enfouies en nous, mais que
But unfortunately, when everything goes well, we may not be able to understand, use and bring them alive properly. It is evident that when God sends a challenge to a person, before it starts, He is already beside that person to help them. It makes me think of a story of a person who dreamed that he was walking beside God on the beach. He sees the footsteps of God and sees his own footsteps, but when a challenge comes, he only sees a single path of footsteps in the sand. And he complains to God, "But God, where were you during the tragedies? Where were you during the challenges? Where were you during the difficulties? I didn't see you by my side." Because there was only one path of footsteps. God answers, "Well, who told you that these footsteps are yours? These footsteps are in." And he asked God, "Where was I if my footsteps were not beside yours?" And God answered, "I was carrying you in my arms." If families are able to continue to rebuild themselves, live and move on with their lives, it is because during challenges, God carries us in His arms and covers us with His divine protection. Otherwise, we won't be able to keep on living after such a drama or tragedy.
And there's a prevailing hope in Toulouse that there will be no more drama, no more tragedy, no more terror. It's been over a decade since this merciless act of terrorism. So is there now a sense of shalom in the Toulouse Jewish community? Considering 600 Jewish families have moved from this area since the attack, it's a good question to ask.
On ne peut pas empêcher les gens de décider de partir en Israël.
We can't stop the people who decided to go to Israel.
Et c'est une décision que j'ai prise.
It's a decision I will make myself in 5 or 6 years, and I made this decision to go to Israel before the tragedy.
De continuité en tout cas de la vie d'un juif.
Israel is an ideal life for a Jew, and it's registered like that in the genes of the Jews.
C'est une décision, voilà. Mais c'est vrai que notre rôle...
It's a decision that people will make, but it's true that our role is to organize life in France so that the Jews have a good life and flourish.
But the overriding thought is that anti-Semitism is not going away and is still a problem that is escalating in France, causing many Jewish families to leave. Toulouse Mayor Jean-Luc Modin agrees. In a speech he gave marking the liberation of the city of Toulouse from the Nazis, Modin said that anti-Semitism has not disappeared and is even resurging. Deputy Mayor Nicole Yardini explains the threat.
I link it, and I'm not the only one, to the civil war in Algeria. There was a civil war in Algeria during the 90s between Islamists and the government. And when the government finally won, a lot of Islamists came here in order to convince others to join the jihad. And we felt 97, 98, 99, that things were changing. And then there was 9/11 in the United States, and a lot of people in those neighborhoods started rejoicing. And we felt that things were getting worse. We tried to warn the officials and warn them, not only about Jews, but what was the struggle that was happening in the world and in the West within certain groups. But it was easier to sweep it under the rug.
In an extensive survey on anti-Semitism in France conducted by the American Jewish Committee, 85% of French Jews say anti-Semitism is a widespread phenomenon in France today, and 73% believe it's increased over the past 10 years. 3/4 of French Jews claim they've been victims of anti-Semitic attacks during their lives, including derogatory remarks, threats on social media, verbal threats, and physical violence. So is there anything that can be done overall to reverse this upward trend of hatred? I asked Olivier Melnick, a French Jew from Paris who now lives in the Dallas, Texas area. Melnick is considered an expert on anti-Semitism and has written several books on the topic. So Olivier, how can we prevent anti-Semitism?
Well, Lisa, I don't think we can prevent it, but it's like the bully on the, in the schoolyard. Sometimes you can't prevent them, you still have to fight them. It's the right thing to do. So we have to fight anti-Semitism. We have to help the victims of anti-Semitism, the Jewish people. I don't believe it's ever going to stop completely until Messiah returns. That's the end, when anti-Semitism will be conquered. But until then, we have a duty to speak up, to say that it's wrong, to defend our Jewish friends, to go out to do anything we can to defend and protect and provide for our Jewish friends.
Where do you think it's all headed?
It's, I take a biblical worldview. So for me, I look at things through the lens of the Bible, and through the lens of the Bible, I know that my Messiah is going to return one day, and until then, there's going to be much turmoil in the world. I mean, you don't have to look much, to see we're going there. We're not quite there yet, but there's going to be a lot more turmoil. There's going to be a lot of animosity between the world and Israel and the Jewish people, and anti-Semitism is going to, unfortunately, increase even more than what we see right now.
As a teacher, of course, my answer would be teaching people again and again and again, especially so as the last witnesses from the Shoah generation of course, are dying now because they are old. We have to be the next generation. We have to be the next witnesses. We have to do it. We have to fight hatred every day, every single minute.
First of all, I don't believe there is an end to this problem until the Messiah is going to come. Sorry, as a Jew, you have to joke about it because otherwise it's very hard. As a Jew, you know that people have to feel good in order for anti-Semitism not to be used as a political weapon. You cannot prevent people from being, unhappy, unfortunately. In a sense, my role as the head of the Jewish organization was a political role, because I know it's a political tool, anti-Semitism. And again, as a deputy mayor, I know exactly how things can be politicized. So my fight is not to make people intelligent or happy, it's to fight who makes and who uses anti-Semitism as a political weapon. Because that's all I can do.
And this hatred is hereditary, and often we perceive that people with hate towards the people of Israel don't even know what it is. They don't know what Israel is. If you take the majority of people who hate Israel and make them travel to Israel, they will discover the solidarity and unity of the religions that are there, between the mosques and the churches, and how the Arabs live with the Jews. And when they are hospitalized, they have the same rights. We can say that Israel is a country of apartheid. People are ignorant and unknowledgeable. It's the misinformation from when they were young, made on social networks that went to their heads and fed this hate. But unfortunately, this hatred is really unjustified and incomprehensible. It is necessary to just try to understand better what is going on in the world and try to be interested in it. It's necessary to have general knowledge, and from that point on, when we understand what the people of Israel bring to humanity, there is no longer a need to feed that hatred.
I think for Christians, coming from Catholic tradition, the late Pope John Paul II, who had many Jewish friends, said, the Bible is written by the Jews and you cannot fully understand it if you don't read it without them. So read the Bible with the Jewish commentaries. Go find the Jewish commentaries. See how the word is understood. And you cannot understand the Second Testament without the First.
Anti-Semitic attacks like the one that occurred in Toulouse are acts against Almighty God. Psalm 11:5 says, "The Lord tests the righteous, but his soul hates the wicked and the one who loves violence." We must keep our eyes open and renounce any hatred against the Jewish people. It is through the Israelites that God first revealed himself to mankind. Deuteronomy 14:2 says about the Jews, "For you are a holy people to the Lord your God, and the Lord has chosen you to be a people for himself, a special treasure above all the peoples who are on the face of the earth." It is up to humanity to promote peace and harmony rather than hatred and strife. Let's put an end to anti-Semitism before it ever materializes. That way, there will never be another day of terror like the one that occurred in Toulouse.